All right, well, this week is a little different. We normally do a series where we do several messages that run together. This week, we're just going to do one message. It's kind of a standalone. And as you know, Thanksgiving is quickly approaching. It's hard to tell sometimes because we came out of Halloween and Christmas just kind of meshed together. You were buying candy and Christmas trees at the same time. But there is Thanksgiving that's in between all of that. And so we see that that's quickly approaching. Anyone listening to Christmas music yet? Yeah, see, it's already playing. It's already happening. So next week, we're going to start our Christmas series. It's just going to be called The Sounds of Christmas. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at famous Christmas songs and pull out a deeper meaning. And this is going to be a great opportunity to invite someone. Everyone listens to Christmas music, whether you like it or not. You go into a store, you hear Christmas music, it's on the radio. And so we're going to pick out some of these famous, most favorite ones, and we're going to pull some things out of it and teach on that. It's, again, a great opportunity to bring friends and family who wouldn't typically go to church or maybe during the season would like to go to church somewhere. I would encourage you to invite them and to be a part of this series, The Sounds of Christmas. And I just started thinking about Thanksgiving this week and how it could be an interesting Thanksgiving for many people. We've already seen just through this election, there's some things that have happened. And so this could be an interesting Thanksgiving for some families. I also know that Thanksgiving is interesting in itself. There's brokenness, there's hurt, and you have to face some of that. And oftentimes it's not talked about, but you know it's there. Maybe you've lost someone. Holidays are always the most difficult time. You remember the person who's not sitting around the table that year. And so Thanksgiving is difficult. And so I just wanted to pause today in the midst of the series we just came out of and before we head into Christmas and kind of talk about this idea of being thankful. The idea of being thankful. We'll stop on Thursday for many people and you'll have a meal. And it's the idea of Thanksgiving, of being thankful. But we know that evening, many places are going to open up, there's going to be shopping, and people are going to lose their minds. And on Friday, people are going to fight over microwaves and TVs, and so they'll spend the day being thankful, and then that all goes out the window as they grab whatever they can, right? And so I think we can all do a little better when it comes to being thankful. I know myself, thank you cards are not my strong suit. I try and get my thank you cards out. If it wasn't for my wife, they would never go out. She is so kind and gracious and forceful in making sure that I get my thank you cards out. And so if you've given me something I haven't given it to you, they are coming. I saw the other day they have fill in the blank thank you cards for children. That might be what I need. Thank you for and then you just fill in the blanks. That might be a good Christmas present for me to ask for. But again, I think we can do a better job of being thankful people, And I actually think that if you're a follower of Jesus and you're here today, I actually think it's a spiritual issue. I think it's a spiritual issue. So it's not just this holiday, but it really is this way of life that we should take on, this idea of being thankful. And so we're going to look at really one story this morning. It's found in Luke 17. If you don't have a Bible, there's a red Bible around you. Please take that. That's our gift to you. We'd love for you to have that. You can write in it, mark it up, whatever you want to do. But we're going to look at one story this morning found in Luke 17. Page number will be on the screen as well. Luke 17, starting in verse 11. This is in what's called the Gospel of Luke. It was written by Luke, who was a follower of Jesus. He was also a physician. And so it's interesting as you read the accounts of Luke, he pulls in some details that aren't in some of the other accounts of Jesus' life. He has more miracles, more parables. He has stories that aren't found in the other accounts of Jesus' life, and this is one of those. Verse 11. It says, "Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, 'Jesus, Master, have pity on us.' When he saw them, he said, 'Go, show yourselves to the priests.' And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, 'Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except for this foreigner?' Then he said to him, 'Rise and go. Your faith has made you well.'" I want to pull out kind of 3 things that I see in this story that I think will help us be thankful. The first one is to be thankful in all circumstances. To be thankful in all circumstances. Now, as I thought about the idea, this term, be thankful, you could really change the way you look at that just by adding something at the end. So if we did be thankful with an exclamation point, this kind of, you need to be thankful, right? That often doesn't work. If you're a parent and you've had children, that's often how we talk to our kids. You need to be thankful for what you have. Did you tell them thank you? You need to make sure and say thank you. And we're trying to teach our kids, but often it comes across as just say the words. It doesn't matter what's on the inside. Just be thankful. I remember when I was a kid and I'd have friends who would do this as well. They wouldn't want to eat their food, and so their parents would say, there's starving children around our world. And I don't think I ever said this, but I've heard other kids say, well, let's send it to them, right? And so there's this idea, you just need to be thankful. But guilt, as we often talk about, guilt it doesn't last. So if we just feel guilty and then out of our guilt we're thankful, then I don't think that's what God is really after. But then you can also add a question mark. Be thankful? I mean, do you know what I'm going through? Do you know what my life looks like? Kyle, you're asking me to be thankful in the midst of that? Are you serious? Do you know the sickness that my family is in? Do you know that we've lost someone? Do you know the broken relationship? Do you know I can't pay my bills this week? And I'm supposed to be thankful? Many of you know I take my daughter hunting, and this weekend was the time I was able to take Kennedy. She's just turned 11. I took her hunting, and I've almost every year tell a hunting story. And I keep waiting for a great hunting story, but it usually doesn't turn out to be a great hunting story. And yesterday was quite the same. I took Kennedy out, and we were in the woods pretty much all day. And we get into our stand about 5:45 in the morning, and we're sitting there. And about an hour later, these 3 doe come out. And if you are not a hunter and you do not like hunting, I apologize. Don't think bad of me, please, because I hunt. Just love me. And so I took Kennedy out, and we see 3 doe, and I get excited, and I get Kennedy to see them, and they get kind of far away, and so I take a shot, and I think I may have hit this doe, and I get excited, and so we wait a while, and then Kennedy and I go searching for this doe. No blood, so those who don't like hunting, you can celebrate. I missed this doe, and so we get back into my stand, and we hunt the whole day. We hunt the whole day and never see anything else. Right? And this is my 11-year-old daughter, the 4th year of being hunting with me, and we've never been able to take a deer. And in the midst of that, I'm thinking of my message. I'm beginning to be frustrated. I may have made a few deals with God if he would just provide a deer for me. I did maybe do that. But nothing comes out. And there was this thing in me where I'm like so upset and frustrated. And then I begin to think about how I'm supposed to be thankful in all circumstances. I'm with my daughter, and I look over in these big brown eyes, and she just looks sad. And I'm like, gosh, come on, another year of this. And so we clean everything up, and we're walking out. And it's starting to get dark, and again, I'm just dealing with this stuff. And this is what Kennedy says. She says, today was such a good day. I'm like, just crushed. She's like, I had so much fun being with you. And I'm like, you're so right. You're so right. It's about us just being together and the presence and spending time with one another. But here's what happens. In the midst of that, you think, man, how can I be thankful? Right? It's not going as I want it to go. What do I have to give thanks for? And so I know, as I say, to be thankful in all circumstances. For many of you, your response is, thankful? I'm supposed to be thankful in the midst of what I'm going through? I mean, we just heard about this young boy who's killed. Are we really supposed to be thankful in all circumstances when things don't go as planned, when we get bad news, when relationships don't go as we want? Hey, look, it's easy to be thankful when things go well, right? Things go as planned. Yeah, we'll be thankful, but when things don't, when circumstances change, it doesn't go well. So as we think about this story that we just read about the 10 lepers, I think it's important that you understand who a leper is and what leprosy looks like. I've never encountered anyone, but just doing a lot of reading and understanding, it is a horrible disease. You would begin to lose the feeling of your nerve endings. And so literally what would happen is you may get an injury or a sore, and you would never feel it. And so your body would break out in all these sores. If you had leprosy, you could lose fingers, toes. You literally could have limbs just fall off. You could become blind. If you had a piece of stone or dirt in your eye, you wouldn't know it because you wouldn't feel the pain of it, and you could eventually become blind. I mean, it's one of the worst diseases that you could possibly have, and it wasn't a quick disease. They said it would often take about 30 years for leprosy to run its course. Horrible disease. And so we have 10 people who are carrying this horrible disease. But see, the thing is, it was much worse than just what happened to you physically. The bigger impact is what would happen to you emotionally and relationally. Because if you had leprosy, you had to be excommunicated from the community. There was this thought, if I touch someone or if I'm touched by someone who has leprosy, then I would get leprosy. So if you're married, immediately when you have leprosy, you have to leave your spouse. No kiss goodbye, no hug, no nothing. You're gone. If you have children, no goodbye, no hug. You just have to leave, and you have nobody and nothing. And so what would happen is all these lepers would begin just living together, and you would have leprosy colonies. And so they lived life together, and they would travel with one another. They would smell. No one would be around them, and they lived life alone. And so what would happen is they would call out everywhere they went. They would yell out, "Leper! Leper!" They would warn people. So everywhere they went, they had to declare their brokenness. They had to declare their disease because they wanted to make sure people knew that they were coming to avoid the smell and to avoid being touched by them. And also they would beg that way. So they would holler out if they needed something. And the hope is someone would place something on the ground, and then as they walk by, they would pick it up. This is the life that a leper would live. And so we see here, this happens. It says that they stood at a distance. They didn't want to get close to Jesus, but they had heard about Jesus. And I think if Jesus could just see us, if he could just know what's going on in our lives, then maybe something would happen. So they stand off in a distance and they call out in a loud voice. So it was no different with Jesus than it was the other people. They begin to yell out, "Master, have pity on us." What they're actually saying is, would you make us well? Would you have compassion towards us? Would you heal us and fix us? Now, we see in a lot of the other scriptures and a lot of the other healings is that Jesus then heals. Right? He touches the blind man. He heals the paralytic. He heals other lepers just in the moment by touching. But this one is different. This one is different. I want to point out, first of all, that Jesus sees them. I think this is interesting in this story. Because my wonder is, as a leper, if you at some point felt like no one saw you. Right? They would hear you and they would know that you were coming. They would smell you, but no one really saw you and saw you at a deep human level. They just saw you by your disease and by your brokenness. But the scriptures say that Jesus sees them. And that is often said in the Bible, that Jesus would see people. He would see the woman who was bleeding for years and who touches him and is healed and begins to slip away. But Jesus finds her, and it says that he sees her. There's something special to me when I think of people who are broken, who are hurting, which is all of us, and this idea that Jesus sees us, that he knows us, that he knows our deep, dark secrets that nobody else knows. He knows the mistakes we've made in the past, but yet he sees us and he cares for us and he loves us. And so this happens with these lepers, but then he doesn't heal them. He gives them instruction. He says, "Go see the priest." So he sends them off. Now, why would he do this? A priest in that time would do kind of what I'm doing. He would lead people in worship and any of the rituals that they would have. The priest would do that. But he was also kind of the leading health official. And so anyone who was sick or had a disease would come to the priest to show that they had been healed. And in doing that, would welcome them back into the community. And so Jesus says, "Go see the priest." Now, if I'm the leper, I'm thinking, man, I just want to be healed. Just fix my problems. Just fix what's going on. Jesus, just fix me now. But Jesus sends them off. And what's amazing to me is they go. They go. And they have to think, nothing has changed from the moment I met Jesus to now. My life is the same. But they go and they're obedient to Jesus. And they head to the priest. And what amazes me is that at some point as they walk to the priest, they're healed. Healing begins to take place. Now, I don't know how far they had to walk. I don't know if it was around the corner, if it's miles, if it's days. But at some point, this healing begins to happen. It begins to take place. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the guy next to you? He was missing a finger, and then all of a sudden his finger comes back. I mean, can you imagine skin that was white and dead now has life to it? And they get to the priest and they declare that they've been healed. And this is my thought. I wonder if they were thankful as they went. I wonder if they truly believed that there was hope and that there was healing that was going to take place in their lives before it happened. Right? They had to go thinking that they were going to enter the priest and that Jesus was going to do something in the midst of them being obedient and walking. I begin to think about faith and I begin to think about being thankful. And a lot of what I think being thankful means is having hope in the things that we don't know about. It's having this amount of faith in something that we can't put our hands on. The writer in Hebrews says it like this, Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. I have some faith in things I don't understand. I have some hope in things that I can't explain. But I'm thankful for those things. We have a lady in our congregation who passed away. Her name was Helen. She just passed away in the last couple of days. Part of Trinity for 35, 40 years, for a really long time. And I was with Helen and her daughter and granddaughter Thursday night late. And her granddaughter began to really struggle and wrestle. And this idea of, I don't want to lose my grandma, but I want her to be well. You've been in that position probably. You see someone in pain and you want them just to go. They love God. And so there was this hope that this granddaughter had, that Alzheimer had taken her grandmother's mind and sickness had overrun her body. But there was this hope. She couldn't put her hands on or her finger on, but she had this hope that her grandma was soon to be well. And it hurt and there was pain and she didn't want to say goodbye. But there was this hope, right? And so I wonder if these lepers leave thinking things are going to change for me. But they went without anything changing. And so for many of us, I think we have this idea of, I'll be thankful when. Right? I'll be thankful when, as I pray, this deer shows up, and then I'll be thankful. I'll be thankful when I get out of debt, when I have some money and I can pay my bills and I'm not stressed. I'll be thankful when, just fill in the blank. And so really what happens is we'll just be thankful when our circumstances change. Right? But the scripture is pretty clear that we are to be thankful in all circumstances. And I know that you're going through difficult things. And I'm not any different than you. I stand and I speak and I have the title of pastor, but I'm human and I'm a follower of Jesus. I have those struggles and those things that are going in my own life and fears and worries and unknowns that I have to be thankful in the midst of those as well. And it's not easy. And then you have this statement that's made in the Bible by Paul, who we talk a lot about in 1 Thessalonians 5:16 and 18. And this is what he says. This is difficult. He says, be joyful always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. How in the world could Paul say this? Right? Does Paul know what you're going through? Does Paul know what I'm going through? How in the world could I have joy always? How can I give thanks in every circumstance? Who does Paul think he is? But if you know who Paul is, if you've read the Bible, Paul did not have an easy life. Shipwrecked, snake bitten, stoned, eventually put to death, in prison, and he probably even wrote this from prison. So here's the deal. Paul didn't write this from the mountaintop thinking, yeah, life's always going to be well. He was writing it from the valley. He was writing it when things were not going well. But he says in the end there that this is God's will for you. This is his plan for you. We talk about God's will at times, like which way do I go? Which school do I choose? Which job do I take? God, what's your will for my life? And sometimes those things aren't really spelled out. Those aren't really clear. This is. The Bible says this is God's plan for you. That you figure out how to be joyful always and to pray or be in connection with God continually, to give thanks in all circumstances. This is what God wants for your life. But how? I'm going to give you something at the end that I hope will help you. But we have to figure out, how do we be thankful in all circumstances? The second thing is to be thankful for God's goodness. So be thankful for God's goodness. This is actually an act of worship. So what we did earlier was spending these moments and this time being thankful for who God is and what God has done. This is why we sing Psalm 48. Psalm 48:1 says, great is our God and greatly to be praised. Great is God, and so greatly to be praised. Not great is God, and so we'll give him a little bit of praise every once in a while or Sundays, but greatly to be praised with our lives. This is why we sing. And so we see in the scriptures here, Luke 17, again, 15 and 16, it says, one of them, when he saw he was healed, he came back praising God in a loud voice. I love this. This was his life, right? This was the leper's life, that he was always having to call out in a loud voice what's going on. But his message is now changed. For he was once declaring his brokenness. He's now declaring that he's been healed, that he's coming back and he's recognizing who God is and what God has done. He comes back to thank Jesus. One person recognizes what has gone on and he falls at the feet of Jesus and he thanks him. What happened to the other 9? Like it doesn't say, there's no information that says what happened to the other nine. So I just began to think and I thought about my own life. Like what keeps me from being thankful? What keeps me from recognizing when God does something to give him thanks? I think one of those is when we complain. We complain so much, right? I mean, let me say, you may not. I complain so much, and it is nearly impossible to be thankful and complain. I'm not sure that it can coexist. Even last week, I'm at dinner with my wife and my son. We're at Olive Garden, and they have the never-ending bowl of pasta. And so I order the never-ending bowl of pasta, and I'm stuffed after my first bowl of pasta, but I'm like, this is the never-ending bowl of pasta, so I have to order another bowl of pasta. Waters are empty, and we have no idea where our waiter is. I'm stuffed already. I'm thankful for the meal that I've had. But in me, and as I talk to my wife, I'm like, where's he at? I start complaining. Why hasn't he come back? Does he know this is a never-ending bowl of pasta and I want another bowl of pasta? Why hasn't he come back? And honestly, you can pay your bill at the table. We just paid our bill at the table and left. We complain so much. And if you have social media, it's like a license to complain, right? It's a license to complain about things. But I just know I've never in the middle of complaining also been thankful. I just don't know if it can coexist. And so I don't know if these guys, when they were healed, they had just had something else come up. They had another problem, and so they went to something else to complain about. Or the other big one that keeps us from being thankful is we compare. It's hard to be thankful when you're comparing what you have or who you are with other people. It's nearly impossible. You've heard me say before, comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. Things will never be good enough. I did shoot a deer. I wasn't with my daughter. Maybe she's the problem. Not really, but I did shoot a deer when I was by myself, and got a little buck, and felt good about it. And I started doing some research about deer taken in Missouri, and I came across this story. I don't know if you saw this. This possibly record deer that I'll show you. If you don't know anything about hunting, that is a big deer. And if you notice, this is an 11-year-old girl standing with this deer. And so I started thinking, this 11-year-old girl shot this massive deer. I don't have a picture of my deer because it's very small. And I was a little ashamed by it. No, it was a decent deer. But look, the way I felt about it completely changed when I saw what someone else had done. Right? So you do something, you feel good about it, and then someone else is just a little bit better. You feel good about your house, and then you go to someone else's house, and it's decorated a lot nicer, and they're a lot more modern and trendy, and you like the way they've done things, and then you just look at your house a little bit different. Your car's not quite as good, you don't make near enough money, your job isn't the same, your kids aren't the same as those other ones. It's hard to be thankful if we're always comparing ourselves and our things to other people. And then as Kennedy and I, last thing with this is Kennedy and I are driving back, and she's like, hey, what are you preaching on Sunday? And so I said, I don't know if you ever heard the story of the 10 lepers. And then she began to teach me the story of the 10 lepers. And I was like, why do you think we're not thankful? And she's like, I think we just take things for granted. I was like, all right, take things for granted. That's good. I'm going to add that to my notes. I was like, that is so true, right? Like, I don't stop to be thankful because I'm like, yeah, I just got it. I just take things for granted. I take people for granted. I take what God's done in my life for granted, right? I mean, I think we should never forget about God's grace. That's why every time we sing Amazing Grace, whether it's at a funeral or in a service, that should be the strongest song that we sing. This amazing grace. How could we ever forget about it, right? But we just take things for granted. And so I don't know if some of these guys just took it for granted. Their life was different. Things are well. They go about their business. They're back in relationships, and they just take for granted what God had done for them. So I just want to encourage you to do something this week. Could you just pause long enough with some people around you and give thanks? So maybe it's with family, maybe it's with immediate family, maybe it's with a group of friends, maybe it's before eating your Thanksgiving dinner, but you just stop long enough to say, could we just spend a few minutes saying what we're thankful for? Now, I know not everyone in your family, or I'm guessing not everyone in your family is maybe spiritual, or they're not a Christian, and that's okay. You don't have to over-spiritualize it. I believe everything good we have comes from God. Other people may not recognize that quite yet. But what if you just pause long enough to say, okay, let's just say what we're thankful for. Like before football, before eating, before your nap, before Black Friday shopping, like let's just pause long enough and be thankful. And in doing that, we'll recognize God's goodness. The other 9 lepers miss it, but the one doesn't, and he returns, and he's thankful for what God has done. His thankfulness leads to action. His thankfulness leads to action. All right, last one. Be thankful and be well. Be thankful and be well. And this is what I mean by that. I think the more we live a thankful life, the better our lives will be. I think our relationships will look different if we're thankful. I think our marriages, our relationship with our kids, with our boss, with our employees, with our community, if we begin to live truly thankful lives, I think our lives will begin to look different. And it'll look different at a deeper level. And this happens for this guy. It comes back, and I want to just break this down really quickly. Verse 15 says this. When he saw he was healed, right? So verse 15, when he saw he was healed, they use this word. I'm not even going to attempt to say this one. It's extremely difficult. But it literally is just a medical term meaning cured. Okay, so he was no longer sick. He was cured. And then verse 17, it says, Jesus says, we're not all 10 cleansed. Kind of meaning the same thing, but he uses a different word. And this time he's saying all of your impurities have been removed. So you've seen yourself one way, you've been broken, you've been unclean. That is all gone. Okay? And then verse 19, it says this, your faith has made you well. Now it sounds like he's kind of saying the same thing through all of that, but this last word is this word sozo. Sozo. And this word sozo means something radically different. It means to be delivered, it means to be rescued, or to be saved. And so it would often be used if you were going to deliver a baby, you would sozo the baby. If a sailor is shipwrecked, if they're lost at sea, you would say that the sailors were sozo, that they were rescued. But the way Jesus uses it is to say that he's been saved. It's also the term when Joseph finds out what he's supposed to name Jesus. So Jesus, son of Mary, and Joseph hears that he's supposed to name this Christ child Jesus. The angel says because he will save his people. And this word save is sozo. So Jesus will sozo the people. And then Jesus says this to the leper, that your faith has sozoed you, that it has made you well. Way deeper than just being cleansed, way deeper than just being healed of leprosy. It was an eternal thing. It was a life-giving moment for this leper, that he had been saved. Paul also uses it in Romans 10, 9 and 10. It says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved, or sozoed. So I don't know if you know this, there's all kinds of healings that take place in the Bible. But all of those people get sick and die. So they were healed in a moment, but then something else takes place. The healing doesn't necessarily last. They're healed of the momentary thing. But this man experiences healing on an eternal level. That ultimately what Jesus is saying is, you have recognized who I am. You have come back and you have worshiped me, right? We said that recognizing God's goodness was an act of worship. And so he comes back and he worships Jesus. And in the midst of that, Jesus says, this has saved you. That one day you're going to get sick again and you're going to die. But you have been made well. That you've been saved. That eternity is going to look different for you now because of this moment. And so I started thinking about us. And we become thankful for so many things in our lives. But then I started thinking about this idea of God rescuing us, of God saving us. First of all, do you remember, if that's happened for you, what that was like? Do you remember that moment when you heard about God's grace? And there was an opportunity to accept that and to follow that. Well, in that moment that God had sozoed you. Now, for many of you, you've gone to church for a really long time, and maybe you punched your ticket, and you've been here, and you know the right things, and you know what you're supposed to do or not do. But has God sozoed you? If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, if you believed in your heart that he's been raised from the dead. If not, man, today would be a great day to do that as we head into Thanksgiving. You could not be more thankful for anything in your life than God's grace and his love for you. Some of you, maybe the idea of a loving God is such a foreign idea. You've heard about God and you thought you had an idea about who God is. But to think about God sending Jesus to save you, that no matter what you've done, no matter what your life looked like, that he intervenes in your life to rescue you, to deliver you, to save you. That would be great for you to think about doing today. Just in your own heart, in your own mind, to recognize that God's presence is real, that the brokenness you have in your life, maybe that can be taken away or maybe not. But ultimately what matters most is that God would truly save us. I want to, as we end, I want to just read. So how do we do this? I'm just going to read a scripture for you. This is Paul. So this is the Paul that lives a crazy, crazy life. The one who says to give thanks in all circumstances. He says this. It won't be on the screen, I don't think. Philippians 4:12. It says this. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. He's lived both sides. He's experienced both. He's experienced your good days, and he's experienced probably worse than you could ever imagine. But he says he's learned. He's learned to be content. He's learned the secret, and this is it. He says, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. So you don't know how to be thankful? We begin to ask God to help you. We begin to ask God to save us, to rescue us. That in the difficult circumstances, we look for hope. The things we can't put our finger on, the things we can't explain, we hold on to those things. I just want to encourage you today. We don't do this often. But if today would be a day that you said, yeah, I want to give my life to Jesus. Never done it. I've just realized that. I hope that you'll make that happen. I'd love to know. I'd love to be able to pray with you. I'd love to be able to encourage you. My number, my email's in the bulletin. You could send me a message if you want me to pray with you afterwards. I'd love to do that. Just this boy dying is sometimes that happens. Something happens to your mind and your heart. And then being with Helen just 24 hours before, we lost another lady last week. Jesus saves. Jesus saves us. He rescues us and loves us. We don't have to be afraid of death. We can rejoice and have hope in the things we can't see because of what Jesus has done for us. And so if that would be you today, I'm not going to ask you to do anything or to make yourself known in front of other people. Maybe later you want to do that and be baptized. But if you would like me just to pray with you, I'm just going to hang out up here after the service. I'd love to meet you and to do that. But for all of us this week, let's figure out how to be thankful. Would you pray with me? God, thank you for who you are. And in the midst of the things that go on in our lives, we can cling to the hope that we have in you and be truly thankful. Be thankful for your love and your gifts of grace, your presence in our lives, not stuff, but you and for the people around us. So God, I pray this week as we celebrate and think about Thanksgiving, would we have some moments of being thankful for who you are and thankful for those around us. I pray for my friends who maybe today would say that they've never taken a step to follow you, to recognize this grace and forgiveness and to be saved as this leper ultimately finds true healing and is made well. I pray, Lord, there's many people today who are made well. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Love you guys. See you next week.